It doesn't say we're live. Okay. All right, folks. Can any of you hear us? Can any of you see us? Cause it says we're live, baby. Now, hopefully you can hear us. Josh, say hi to everyone.
Hey everybody, if you can hear this.
Yeah, I want chat. We're live now. All right, folks.
Good.
All right, it says we're live, therefore I can finally turn this screen off and bring us here. Hi, everyone. It is me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as the Mechanic Critic, in my student attire. And with me is the ever wonderful, ever amazing project manager, level 99 games himself.
Josh, also known as Ithri, in my casual Argent attire.
Right. Yeah. See, we were thinking about which way to go with this, whether or not we were to dress like students or to rep gear from the setting. So we decided for a middle ground where one of us would do one thing and the other one would do the other. Hopefully this is amenable to everyone. Hello, folks. I'm so excited to share with all of you what the heck is going on. Josh, can you tell me what the heck is going on?
This is going to be quite the stream. What is going on is our announcement of Adventures at Argent, Everyday Life at a Magical University, our next roleplay game, tabletop role game after Mystic Empyrean.
Well, power play.
And power play, yeah.
Right. So fans of very narrative-focused games will probably really enjoy this game as well. I would consider it to be one of my most anticipated level 99 games this year. I mean, we have a lot of cool games coming this year. Cough, cough, something, bullet, something, right? Cough, cough. Cough, cough, 7th cross, cough, cough, 7th cross, right? But, on the top of that heap for me might just be Adventures at Argent. Now, quick disclaimer. Before we talk about anything else, Josh, we want to make something clear. And what is that thing?
Yeah, so RPG, as we love to call it, behind the scenes, Adventures at Argent is still development. So anything you hear on this stream is not necessarily final and is subject to change, though the system is fairly set at this point. What you'll be hearing about should be kind of more or less maybe close to the final product.
Right,
but nothing final.
There's also another point that I need to make, is that just because we're talking about it now doesn't mean that the Kickstarter's coming this year. Exactly, no exact dates, right? Like, I want to make it very clear.
No dates yet. Yeah, there will Kickstarter. We're hoping it's this year, but no dates yet.
Right. Like, I don't want to misconstrue anybody. I don't want to, give anybody false hope. We are revealing it now because it's something that we know is going to happen at some point. But we're not gonna Cyberpunk 2077 or 7th Cross ourselves by saying it's coming out at an exact date, then inevitably having to delay it at some point. So we just want to make it very clear. We have a good idea of what it's going to be like. We have a good idea of how we want to give it to all of you. But no exact dates because, we still have other stuff to do. For now, right? So make it very clear. These are all prototype, quote unquote. They're still in development, and there are no exact dates. Cool? If everybody's in agreement, say cool in the chats. Now, Josh, what's next on our outline? What should we talk about? So what's the structure of this video going to be?
Argent, which is Argent.
So we're going to be talking about the setting. We're going to be talking about some of the mechanics, and then we're also going to be talking about maybe some anecdotes here and there. But at the end of this all, we're also going to do a Q&A session. So if you have any burning questions, feel free to, put it in the chat. But do note that most likely it's going to be reserved for the end. So ask them there. But, don't worry if you have some questions that are related to the current thing we're talking about and you want us to clarify something, feel free to ask that in the chat too. And if we feel that it is relevant to the topic of conversation, we will probably mention it and try to answer it while we're answering the questions as well. Regardless, step number 1, setting. So, Josh, what is the setting of Adventures at Argent?
That would be Argent University from the acclaimed board game Argent the Consortium.
Right.
It's a magic school in Indians, kind of like Hogwarts.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, we're assuming that the people who are watching know what Indines is, know what Argent is. So for a complete novice, I'll tell you what Indines is all about. Indines is this magical, mystical land filled with magic, adventure, dragons, wizards, but also steampunk trains and also giant mech robots that can kill said dragons. Indines is a land where essentially a lot of things can happen. It's often a mishmash of different genres, depending on where you are and depending on the level of technology and magic that your society has. Elven society is basically cyberpunk because everybody, like, elves are timeless beings, so their greatest scientists never die. So their cumulative knowledge just keeps piling up and up and up and up and up. And if you compare that to something like Jeffries, Jeffries looks way more like a medieval steampunk kind of place where a lot of the characters and a lot of the magic and a lot of the technology in that place is, very, very, very like medieval fantasy. So it's a lot of things in one, but the most important place is Cor Caroli, the the place where Argent is. What is Argent, Josh, in this setting, aside from just being a magical university?
Right. It's kind of a melting pot. Argent and the adjacent Coracare are kind of a neutral ground where everyone throughout Indians, sort of race and what can come and study magic and live together and all that. So
right.
This is kind of where you see all things you hear about Indians from like BattleCon and Imperial and stuff. You'll see this all kind of come together in Argent and in Coracare.
Right. And Argent is a very unique school because it also has what I would like to call like diplomatic freedom or something. The school itself is a state. So it's like it exists in the city of Cor Caroli, but it is also its own city-state within Cor Caroli, which has its own laws, rules, etc., etc. Essentially turning it into a safe haven for, scholars and people of the like. Argent is an institution, let's just say, right? Like, it's an old institution. A lot of characters can be seen in Argent, characters that a lot of other city-states would not necessarily enjoy having there, So it is entirely possible that some of your professors or some of the staff at Argent are wanted criminals in other states, or refugees from other states, etc., 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 right? So that's kind of like the setting that you're going into. It's a university. It's a university. That's the really important part that I need to emphasize here. It's not high school. It's not grade school. It's university, right? Like, you are an adult. You have your own, wants and needs, and you have your own independence inside the school. You're not going to be fighting against a hall monitor telling you to, like, sleep before curfew or whatever, right? Like, that's not necessarily the kind of setting this is. It's a university. You take your classes, you have a 101, you have a 102, you have a 201, etc., etc., etc. I believe that's it. Josh, what makes this different? The setting or the tone of this game, what makes it different from other, like, magical school RPG kind of games?
Right. I mean, there honestly aren't a ton of, like, RPGs or TRPGs focused on, like, a magic school thing, so honestly that in itself is a thing, but beyond that, is the mechanics of the game, going to class, and the time system and whatnot are like the major mechanics in this game. Every class you take is a different thing. The goals you have are very different than your like traditional fantasy RPG, right? In most other games, you're trying to like slay the dragon or like do some other high fantasy stuff. In this set, you're trying to graduate and pay off your student loans.
Right.
So
right.
Your objectives are very different, and how you accomplish these objectives are very different than other TRPGs.
Right. Like you were saying something along the lines of like it's a magical school with emphasis on school, and I do want to emphasize that because there's a lot of tabletop RPGs actually that are set in schools. Like, from what I've seen, like, there's like an RPG that's essentially like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? Or an RPG that's essentially like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, etc., etc., etc. Right there, or
Right.
but the thing is, a lot of these, in my opinion, right, when I play them, it's an emphasis on the school is the background stuff,
The
and
school's a vehicle for like drama or whatever.
right, the
Right?
school is a vehicle for drama, but also like school is getting in the way of me trying to kill Voldemort, right? Like that's kind of like how I put it, right? Like I need to kill Voldemort, but school or my teachers are getting in the way of me trying to accomplish that. And I just don't tell them that this magical wizard, evil wizard is in the school because they will never understand me and my teenage problems. This game is kind of like the weird flipping of that, wherein you exist.
Yeah, it's I gotta get ready for final, but oh no, Voldemort's over there causing lots of problems. I should probably deal with that.
Right. Exactly. It's like, your character seemingly cares much more about having to pass their final exam or, find a way to meet with their girlfriend, but then for some reason plot keeps happening and you're like, dang it, like these are all distractions from me passing my final exam or, finally kissing my girlfriend or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Your character game is more than a sheet of paper stats, right? It is actually entire book of class is and diary page is and whatnot that for your character, so to speak.
Yes. And that's infinitely more important than, like, yes, I can perform the fireball spell if I am 50 feet away from a target and cast one of my spell slotty things and roll 17 die. Like, this is not that kind of game, right? Like,
yeah, it's a really weird mishmash of, like, the mechanics are very in-depth and specific, but the resolution of those mechanics are very quick and simple. And keeps things moving, right? In Adventure, you don't fight things with stats, right? Things are presented more like a puzzle, right? You can, go into dungeons and do traditional this game, but if you were to do that, it would be presented more like, here's a problem, deal with it with your class spells.
Right.
Here's a dragon. How do you get past it? How you defeat it? It doesn't have stats. It's just there and a problem for your spells to solve, or a problem that you get beat by and sent to the infirmary and lose lots of valuable time that you could be going to class.
Exactly. Right? Or here's the thing, like, why even beat the dragon? You could just do a manner of other things, like befriend the dragon, send the dragon to a pocket dimension and enslave it forever. Like, this is the kind of game where you're like...
Right, you could do all kinds of things.
Yeah, this is the kind of game where you're like, I apparate a boat on top of the dragon and crush it, right? Like this is the kind of game
That's not to say that this system doesn't have dice or resolution thing. It does. There's a quick system for things.
Right.
If you want to talk about that, Marco, go ahead.
Okay. It's actually really, really simple because... depending on the schools of magic, or rather the classes that you take, you gain access to different effects and spells, etc., etc. We'll talk more about that later on. But really, it's as simple as there are two kinds of die rolls that you need to make. There is a difficult roll and a trivial roll. So what would a trivial roll be? Oh, it's simple magic. I apparate a light, or I summon a small piece of parchment, or or I cast a minor water spell, right? Something like that.
Trivial things usually don't involve rolls unless there are complications in the scene. If some might make it hard to do your simple thing, you might have to roll some d6s.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first kind of test that the game has. The other one is difficult, wherein the thing you're trying to do is actually hard. Say, like, apparate the boat out of thin air, or convert matter into light, or mutate somebody else's body parts into something else. You know what I mean? And in this case, you do the reverse. The thing is difficult, so the difficulty is high, and you need to essentially narratively justify using these things called traits in order to lower the difficulty continuously. So it's kind of similar to Fate in that sense, right? Where you have a bunch of words that you essentially amass, and you can use them to proc advantages mechanically, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can gain edges from anything, right? Like, you can have items that give you edge. Is like essentially how the dice works. Is if a spell is specifically late, it's difficult, or if the GM thinks that you need to roll a dice to do something it's trivial, you are presented with a DC that is secret. The GM knows the DC for the check, and you gain dice equal to one of your stats. So stats in this game aren't traditional that it's a number per se. Your stats are an amalgamation of character traits.
So let's actually halt a little bit, and before we start getting into character traits, let's talk about making a character, right?
Sure.
So what happens when I make a character, Josh? I mean, like, do I pick a race and that gives me specific stat points and, a mechanic?
You do pick a race, and it can give specific traits if you want them to.
But it doesn't need to, right?
Doesn't need to, right? Your character is defined by 4, quote, stats.
Right.
What is it? Physical, mental, social, and spiritual.
Right.
And unlike, a game like Dungeons and Dragons, you would, put points into that via rolls or whatnot. You put points into is via traits, right? So at the beginning of the game, when you make your character, you have your trait page, which is split into these 4 categories, and you have so many traits you can apply to each category. I think it's like minimum 3, maximum 5, and you have X amount to put in overall.
Right. Numbers are not
so a
final.
Trait for physical, if you're a Virian, might be, I have Virian wings, right? I can fly, right? But you don't have to put that. You do still have wings. You can still, you could still justify them, but if you want to use them to gain an edge, I want to get a better angle my target for this spell, and I get a to look DC with an edge here. You can say, I've got these wings here. It's on my physical stat.
Or if you're
this also defines how many dice you roll when you make a check. If I have 3 traits in physical, I roll 3 dice when I need to make a physical check.
Right. So the way this character creation works is essentially your race is almost entirely cosmetic, right? Because if you wanted to have wings, you don't have to be a Virian. You could just be a human, and then you could just say, I have wings, right? And then we could just misconstrue some lore as to why that's the case.
Well, I mean, ideally, your race gives you abilities like that, but you could do that.
I mean, what if you're just a human with mechanical wings? It's fine, right?
Sure, yeah, you're right.
Right, I mean,
So yeah, you kind of define your character through traits, you might have a social trait that's fast talk, or artist, or something like that.
Right. Actually,
I think mental traits.
I think more than your race. I think the race is kind of like a guideline to the kinds of traits you should be getting. But, you don't have...
It certainly can define, physical and spiritual traits and stuff.
Yeah, how do I put this? Picking a race doesn't lock you into anything at all.
Yeah, picking a race doesn't confer any mechanics to specifically. It can, if you're Korean, you can note that you have wings as a physical trait, but you don't have to.
Right.
Right.
It's
also you can, if you're a ghost, you can still phase through checks and do things that the ghosts could normally do, but you don't have to define it's a trait of yours.
Right.
If you don't want to.
I think that's the thing. And one thing I want to note about Argent is that infinitely more powerful than mechanical power, aka if this were Dungeons and Dragons, my fireball spell has 6d8 or whatever, right? Infinitely more powerful than any of that is actually narrative power, right? 9 times out of 10, this is the kind of game where if you just argue with the DM that my character is a ghost, so I just phase through the wall that attempts to crush me. 9 times out of 10, the DM won't even make you roll for it, because narratively speaking, you are fine, right? That's really the kind of...
A lot of the time you make checks are based on spell casting, right? Some spells have checks associated with them that are keyed to a stat.
Right.
One of those 4 stats.
Right. So here's an example, right? My character has the ability to, convert one element into another element, right?
Yeah, because of a class they're taking.
Right, because they're taking, say...
Thaumics,
right? So, they're okay, I attempt to convert matter into motion, right? So that you can, you can make something move or whatever, right? So your character, because of the School of Magic, has to roll a mental die roll. And the GM's okay, so that's difficult, which means you need 6 successes on it or whatever. Or rather, every 6 that you roll is a success, right?
Yeah, your DC is 6, therefore you're
right. But then I go so my character's okay, well, my character has 4 mental traits, and of them, it's he's good at memorization, he's a good listener, he studies a lot, and he's quick-witted, right? And then I go, okay, well, of all of those traits, I guess what applies is that my character is intelligent and studies a lot. So the DM's like, okay, cool, that's 1 edge. So now your DC is 5, right?
Right, so now 5s and 6s are successes.
Right, now, so 5s and 6s are successes. I roll the 4 die because I have 4 traits underneath my mental stat. And then let's say, Josh, that I roll 1, 1, 5, 3. Right?
Sure. So you have 1 success.
1 success. What does that result in?
That would be a failure, but, right?
Right. So this is the kind of system it is.
Failure and, right? So yeah, there's kind of 4 of success and fail. So then there's failure and failure, but success, but, and then success and.
Right. I mean, and this is quite simple, right? Failure and is you don't do the thing, and then something terrible also happens. Failure but is you don't do the thing, but something happens that helps you along the way, right? Like you might not accomplish the goal, but maybe it makes it easier for somebody else to do the goal in the future. Success but is you do the thing at the cost, and success end is you do a thing, but you also like do something else that's awesome, right? Like you, I don't know, you pass the exam, but also you get bonus points and get 105% on your final grade or whatever, right? Like, that's kind of it. And it's quick and fast, because basically every role in the game functions just the way that I said, right? Like, it's quick and easy. It doesn't take too much. And you barely even roll dice in this game. And I think that's very important. Unless you are actively trying to do...
there's not a lot of difficulty results.
Right. Like, it's unless you're actively trying to break the laws of reality by cough casting magic, you barely need to roll die. Like, you know, if I go...
Yeah, checks are mainly associated with the casting.
Right. Like, you know...
Which is a decent part of the game, of course.
Of course. Right, but like, you know... The typical example is like, you know, when you play another game, it's like, you know, I leap over the table, and then they're like, roll an agility check, right? Like, you trip and fall off the table. Like, in this game, it's like, you know, I leap over the table, and then the DM's like, why can you do that? And I go like, well, physical, I put that my character's young. So, like, any young person can probably leap off a regular-ass table, right? Like, you know, a regular-ass usual table, right? Like...
Yeah, there's a lot of normal things that you can do checks in this game because, you know, it makes sense, or it makes character, right? The important note about the resolution system is that failure does not mean that you don't cast your spell if you're trying to cast a spell. You always cast your spell, but the result might just not be what you're expecting, right? If I summon a lightning bolt, that lightning bolt's going to go somewhere.
Right.
But if I fail, well, it might not go to the target I was trying to, that it might, you know, hit a tree or the professor or, you know, something like that.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? This game isn't a lot of like, you know, it's not like...
There's not a lot of like, no, you don't do that, or no, you can't.
Right.
Players are very empowered in this system. Players literally get to, like, you know, break the fabric of space-time. Natural magic and harvest rare, you know, killing herbs and herbology with natural magic and stuff that, you know, the players, you know, the mechanics that are hard-coded classes let the players do all kinds of nut stuff. Right.
And that's really this kind of game wherein players feel very powerful, and one thing that I want to note is that you're all students, but like you can do stuff like change the past or like summon a car.
Yeah.
Right. But
this is not a game where the GM is probably going to go, no, you can't do that, or no, that doesn't make sense all the time.
Right.
Because the mechanics literally say, no, I can do this.
Right.
This spell literally says I can, you know, open a portal to the past, or the way that GMs, you know, can deal with it is, you know, they roleplay, or advisors in this game, they're called advisors.
Right.
They, you know, role all the professors at the school who are undoubtedly extremely higher class spellcasters than the players, right?
Right.
So if the GM wants to deal with the problem, they do it, you know, socially by introducing a professor to the scene. Right. Or the student's advisor or whatnot, right?
Right.
You know, they don't just go, no, you can't do that, that's going to break my game.
Right, like
whatever.
That doesn't happen. Like what usually happens here is the game gets broken, and then the GM goes like, okay, but now you have to reckon with the consequences of your actions, right? Like you change...
Yeah. If you like blow up, you know, the belt Argent, like, yeah, good job. You owe the school a bunch of money, and
All
you're
right.
further and further in student debt.
Yeah,
Congrats.
by the way, student debt is a mechanic in this game, and it's usually the
Yep.
common goal that most students have, because enrolling and
Yeah,
tuition
you can't
and
graduate until you pay off your loans.
right.
So
So a lot of this game is actually spending your time trying to find ways to racket up money.
yeah,
that you
doing
can pay-
jobs,
so you can pay your
whatnot.
debt. Okay, so
finding rare things to sell in dungeons.
okay, so I think we've teased the classes enough. Let's talk about the schools of magic. Players of Argent are probably familiar with all of them, but let's talk a little bit about the 6 majors that you can major in Argent. Let's go one at a time. I'll go first. So we have the School of Natural Magic. Natural magic is a magic that says that life, magic, and the physical realm are all intertwined with one another. So you can experience magic through plants, through animals, through your connection with nature. This School of Magic is we jokingly call it jock magic, because that's kind of what it is. Like, a lot of the magic comes from your bonds with things and your connectiveness to other beings in the world. So this is the School of Magic that lets you do herbology. This is the School of Magic that lets you you categorize plants, you categorize animals. So if you think like in real world, like this is like biology, this is like nature studies, but it's also stuff like hang out with your friends at your cool frat party place, and then you get magic because of that, right? Like that's the kind of School of Magic that nature magic is. It's about connectiveness and oneness with other beings. Okay, you next.
Right, bonds.
Right? Friendship.
Right. Sorcery is the second. And it's the traditional magic, evocation type magic, fireballs and lightning bolts, and making cool magic staves and wands and whatnot. But it's like illusions and some mental magics like psionics and whatnot fall into this category.
Oh,
it's kind of your traditional Harry Potter magic, shooting wands and staves at people to blow them up.
Sorcery, I think, is the most straightforward kind of magic, right? Like it's probably the thing that most people associate with magic. Chad is asking, I want college-age Hogwarts with Kung Fu. Can we do that? Yes,
of course.
Absolutely. Like, this is the kind of setting where you can absolutely do that. We'll talk a little bit more about the other kind of stuff you can do at the school after I talk about mysticism. Mysticism is a very interesting branch of magic because it is defined by the fact that it is not defined. Mysticism is a school wherein the magic just seemingly happens for no reason, and if you ever find out why it happens, you would go insane trying to understand. Mysticism is often tied with things like scrying, telling the future, affecting non-physical concepts, right? Like, if sorcery lets you, say, fireball a person, mysticism lets you destroy capitalism or something like that. Like, or, bring something back from the brink of death, or like instill hope in others. That's the kind of school of magic that this is. It's basically witchcraft. If for people who don't know, right? It's basically witchcraft. So mysticism, one of my favorite schools of magic. Josh.
So I guess if we're talking favorites, magic, planar science is mine. This is a school that lets you manipulate space-time. It's time magic, it's space magic, it's manipulating physical properties of things. Take this sheep and making it have feathers instead of wool, and then transfer that wool to my friend there so he can, block somebody that's, gonna blast spell or something like that. It's a lot of physical property magic, mathemagic.
Right.
Specifically.
Yes, mathematics. Man, planar sciences always makes me cry on the inside. Okay, me next. I want to talk a little bit about divinity. Divinity is very interesting on Indines because the way divinity works is it's not necessarily about devotion or faith or religion. Divinity is the magic of laws, regulations, and rituals, right? Like, you gain the blessings of gods not because you are a devout follower of the gods, so to speak. Let's say a person who didn't believe in said gods could well perform the rituals associated with these gods and still receive their blessings. That's kind of like how this works. It's a very transactionary kind of magic, wherein, I offer 2 cloves of garlic, crush it, and then dance a 5-minute dance during dawn. And then the god's like, yep, that's exactly what I wanted. Have your 5 minutes of magic, right? Like, that's kind of how it goes. In this setting, gods are real, and they are very tangible beings that can talk and speak and often appear in front of people. So, gods and stuff are just a thing that exists, and you can gain their favor by just performing their rituals. So this is the kind of magic where you do stuff like make charms for people. You make
commune with dead relatives.
Summon the spirits of the dead. You can interface and interact with gods. You can essentially enforce rules of your gods upon other people. You can. Oh, what else? Like, you can basically it's the school of magic about, like, all of that kind of stuff that you would usually associate with, like, paladins and priests, right? Not that you have to be a holy person.
Yeah, healing magic and whatnot.
Right. So yeah, this is a very interesting branch of magic, and I think it's usually characterized by the fact that a lot of the effects of this class of magic are affecting other people, right? Like, if sorcery is like, blasting a fireball at the thing, and planar science is like manipulate the physical properties of objects, divinity magic is oftentimes affecting other people, healing other people, protecting other people, interfacing with other people, communicating with other people, etc., etc., etc. And of course, the last school of magic, Josh, is
technomancy, my second favorite school of magic. This is kind of the magic of invention. It kind of takes natural forces, like force and motion, and manipulates them via machines, essentially. Or, I guess, the god Macterex, if you want to get specific about it. So, you get to make, motorcycles and cameras and weapons and all kinds of crazy stuff. But you can also manipulate force is a little bit planar science, like Marco was saying, where you can turn, like, motion into electricity in all kinds of nuts things like that.
Right. The thing about technomancy that, like, it reminds me of that one line from Thor or something, where they go like, in my realm, magic and technology are but one and the same. That's kind of like what technomancy is, right? Like, like, it's just highly sufficiently complicated technology to the point where it brings it edges on what is magical, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's very interesting, wherein, like, there's an entire branch of magic that's just focused on, like, making gadgets, and making stuff. So I really like that. So those are the 6 schools of magic. Technomancy, I guess you could call it like an engineering school, right? Like, that's essentially what it is. Like, it's a very practical school.
Right. You have to be very, like, creative and inventive to work in that field.
Okay. So I think those are the 6 branches of magic. We should probably talk about some classes that exist in the world.
Right. So how do you take these schools of magic and apply them to your everyday life at the university?
Yeah, how does the game actually work? How do we actually cast spells? Right. And this is my most favorite part of the game, because it is not like your typical Dungeons and Dragons, like, here is the effect of the spell, and you just do it, right? So let me actually just change some stuff. Let's turn off the slideshow. Let's turn off the background. And here we have a page. You're thinking to yourself, what do you mean a page? Well, actually, Argent is played on notebooks. I have a notebook here. I'm showing it right now. Note that it can be any notebook. This is just my level 99 games notebook. And note that when you play this game, you actually make your schedule. See, these are my traits. My character has a diary. Like, we keep track of the things that we do during the week. But we get to a part where we reach our schedules near the end. And you notice that there are some classes here where you do homework, essentially. On the screen right now is TC 105 Engineering, which is one of the classes that Josh takes. And you can see here that there is a gadget which looks like a old-timey camera. What is this, Josh? Like, how does this class work? How do you use it?
Right, so spells in Argent are all created by players. The class defines the type of spells you can make and the type of things you can make, but what you do within those bounds is completely up to you. So in engineer here, you can see that I literally make inventions. I have a camera there, I have a little pistol, I have some glasses that let me see different things, and those are all completely up to me. All the class does is tell me what I can do. So you go to class in engineering specifically here.
What are your lectures?
There are some lecture actions you can take.
Right.
One of the actions is create a new invention. So you would do that by literally drawing what that invention is on your page, and then naming what it is and what its basic trait is. So, for example, the camera there, that basic trait, it captures images essentially,
right,
and prints them out via film. Or you can add a trait to an existing invention that you have. So when you go to class, you can make a new thing or up thing you have, and you can see that my camera has all kinds of it's on it, different buttons and lenses and stuff to let me do different things with it.
Right, so it has a flash bulb, it has a zoom lens, it has a focus lens.
Right.
And each of these things, essentially notice how none of these are mechanical, quote unquote. They don't add die rolls or whatever. Your camera just gets increasingly more and more narrative power as a result, right?
Right, so casting in this class, involves these traits here that these inventions have. So when I attempt to use an item in engineering, the dice I get is still equal to my relevant stat. I believe in tech. See, it's
Mental?
Social.
Oh, social. Okay.
Right. I believe it's social. So I would still get dice equal to my social stat, but the DC for engineering is based on how many of the traits on that object I'm using. So if I want to use my camera, I'm trying to take a picture of, this cool fight that's going right, so I can sell it to the Seeing Eye and make money.
The Seeing Eye is the school newspaper.
Right. I would, look at my traits on my camera and pick which ones that make sense for this picture. I can use my zoom lens to focus in. I can use my temporal lens to go back 3 seconds in the past because I didn't click the button just enough to catch that really cool fire they cast. I can, use these other traits, and each trait gives me an edge and will reduce my DC by a bit.
Right.
So I'm incentivized to narratively find use for all these traits on my objects to get the best roll result. And if I fail, I still get a picture out of it. It just might not be in focus. It might be blurry or something. But the camera will still function to some extent.
Right.
Right.
So this class is really a really interesting one because you basically get your gadget. I think there's a negative point to your gadget, right? Like because you keep adding more and more traits, it becomes increasingly harder for other people to use your gadget because they're like, what the heck does this doodad do on this gadget, right? Like it's
right, yeah. And that's the other thing too is you usually want to make other things eventually, right? You could focus on thing, but you have finals coming up, and your finals might involve having multiple objects and whatnot, so you can't really stick to do one thing. So that's kind of a class work, right? You have lecture actions when you're in a class. You get to write in your class page and flesh out your spells. And you have cast actions, which are using said spell. So in engineering, you do it like explain. You pick an object, you pick traits that apply to the situation, and you cast, and then roll based on how many traits you got,
right,
and what your traits are. So that's one class, though. If you want to show another class,
sure, I will. Digi in chat is saying it's very power play. It is in that vein. But I think the classes themselves really make a big difference in the way the game plays. I just hope the homework isn't too immersive, otherwise it might constitute a near occasion of sin. Don't worry about the homework. The homework is fun.
Homework is a mechanic, technically, in this game.
Right.
Homework, so you saw those diary pages that Marco showed earlier. So every day you go to Argent, you write down what you did. If you went to a class, you write down with a little mark next to it, and you don't have to do the lecture action in the class when the class. As long as you fill out by the end of the week, you can write in it, and that's homework, right? You have to fill out each class by the end of the week, or you lose access to that lecture action.
Right. Essentially, like mechanically speaking, what it actually is that you don't have to stop the entire game every time somebody has to go to class and figure out what they want to do with their doodads and stuff.
Right, you can just say, I'll go to class and I'll figure out what I'm going to do with that class slot
Right.
later.
Yeah, and that later could be literally like while somebody else is taking their turn and doing a role-playing scene, or quite literally you decide to end the session before the end of the week and you're like, okay, well, I'll just literally take it home and write in my book at home.
As long as you're ready before the next session starts, then you're good.
Right. So that's kind of the homework. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about another class. A class my character takes.
Sure.
This is this is Mysticism 101, also known as Lesser Mysteries. So now that people kind of know how the classes work, I'll talk about the lecture actions. So you have 2 lecture actions in this class. You can put a physical object in a circle. So here you can see vehicles, holes, game pieces, right? Or you can put a non-physical concept in a square. So I have victory, capitalism, death, right? So that's kind of how I flesh out this class. Every time I go to this class, or rather my character goes to this class, they write stuff in the notebook using words as opposed to drawing. The cast of this class is quite simple. This is actually trivial. So unlike the engineering, I usually don't have to roll a die for this one. This is a really weird... So mysticism, this is a mysticism class. So it's kind of weird about how it works. But basically how this works is you draw a line between a physical object, a circled word, and a concept, a rectangled word, and then write a verb that links the two of them, while saying essentially the following sentence. As I verb this physical object, so too shall I verb this concept. So, for example, here, I have fall between hole and victory. So I would say, as I fall into this hole, so too shall I fall into victory. And that's basically my character narratively saying that, like, if I jump into this hole, it's a good thing for me, as opposed to what usually jumping into a hole
maybe
is.
I'll land safely, maybe land on the bad guy.
Right.
Who knows?
Exactly. Right. So when I used the spell, what actually happened was somebody blew up my car, I think, and I was about to fall into a ravine, and I was like, as I fall into this hole, so too shall I fall into victory. And what happened was that my character landed safely and didn't die. So that's one example. Another way that I could do this is I can go, as I destroy this game piece, so too shall I destroy capitalism. And what that could possibly do is that I can go to a shop and destroy merchandise, and then the shopkeeper might be like, oh, I've been meaning to get rid of that, here, have some money. Right? That makes no sense, but because I magicked it with Lesser Mysteries, I'm able to essentially warp reality in weird ways by using semantics, which is a cool thing, and a thing that Lesser Mystery does. Right? Baba is you as a magic system, yes. And here's the thing, right? There are over 30-something of these classes, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's technically over 100.
Right.
But,
so, like, if you think, it's not just we have, like, oh, here's, like, 6 different schools of magic. Like, Lesser Mysteries, or, MY 101, is, like, one of the 10 different mysticism classes you can take, right? Speaking of more diversity, let's talk about another class, and this is a class that Josh takes. It's called Sorcery 103, Incanting. What's this one about, Josh?
Right, so Incanting is a class you inscribe runes to things and make magic circles to enact magical effects on things. So when you go to Incanting, you can create a rune as a lecture. So you draw a little runic symbol, whatever you want, and you tie a verb to it. So things like, floats or, inflame or whatever, you can make rune this. And you can roll to inscribe them onto things and cause effects to happen to the thing you inscribe on. And you can do it isolated. I could write inflame on something, and if I succeed, that thing will just be permanently on fire, like an everlasting torch or something.
Nice.
But the actual application of this class is using magic circles. So combining combinations of runes to make more complicated magical effects. So, for example, in that class, you'll see it on the right of the spread. I have notes for myself of different magic circles that I made. during class and during adventure. Not I have like a listen rune and a teleport rune and a receive rune, and I can use that like on a rock or something and make essentially like a walkie-talkie, right?
Right.
The combination of sound going in, going somewhere else, and then coming out. Now I can make a radio with this little magic circle that I draw on this thing.
So it's kind of like you composite spells using verbs, right? Like,
yeah.
It's a wild class. I don't think I don't think I'm big brain enough to use this. What other magic circles have you made with this class?
Let's see. I think so for my final, which we'll talk about grading in a second, and finals. For my final, Professor Ricky tasked me with making an illusion tangible.
Okay.
And so I used a combination of 4 runes. I forget exactly where. I think it was like inscribe, believe, do, and like some word for like become physical. So basically, I allowed myself to incant on the intangible objects and make it physical, right? So I wrote magic circle on the illusion that caused it to become physical.
Okay, so you made it a real boy, as they say.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And note that's the kind of stuff.
You want to talk about finals and grades?
Wait, I have one more class.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sure. And the last class, I mentioned this earlier, Mysticism 105, which is scrying. My character takes this, so you'll notice that this looks like the ramblings of an insane person, because that's kind of like what mysticism does to your character. So I have 3 lecture actions here. I have the ability to write a location in a in a circle around the center eye. So for example, I have near the dorm wing entrance or near Kelevich's office. I can write a sentence that goes off like a ray, like a sun ray off of the center circle, such as, I find the location of an object, or a friend narrowly escapes danger. Or the last one, I can create a timing or an event and then encircle it. For example, when Kalevich decides which object to hide for the midterm. And the cast actually ties to each of one of these things. So I essentially have scrying runes on each of these locations that are circled around the eye. I essentially have CCTV cameras at all of these locations. So near the dorm ring entrance, I can remotely view that using magic whenever I want, trivially. The rays, like a friend narrowly escapes danger, is essentially a mechanical way for me to force rerolls on things to make them true. So, for example, Brad's character is about to get hit by a fireball, and he rolls to dodge it, and then he fails. My character goes, no. I predicted the future, and I know for a fact that my friend narrowly escapes danger. I cross out the line, and then it just becomes true now. Like, Brad's character does dodge the fireball despite having failed it. And the last one is the DM or the advisor kind of just tells me when this happens. So, like, when Kalevich does decide to hide the object, the advisor just tells me, Kalevich has decided on hiding the object. And then my character just knows that happens. Despite the fact that I have no right or reason to be able to know that. Like, I don't have cameras on him, I don't have informants or whatever. My character just goes like, oh, he knows. He's decided. All right.
You have an epiphany, yeah.
Yeah, I have an epiphany from the gods, and I go, oh, I know. Oh. So the way this class is often used is you alarm for something that you want. For example, I want to cheat on my final test, right? So it's like, oh, the teacher's decided what object to hide for the final test. So go like, oh, I put a scrying rune near Kelevich's office. I scry on that office right now to see if the teacher walks out with the object, right? And if the teacher does walk out with the object, I go like, oh, I know where the object is. Now, during the final exam, it's like, okay, the teacher's like, find the object. And I go like, oh, I roll my die. And then I like, oh, I failed. But wait, I find the location of an object as listed on my class sheet, and it's just true now. I know where it is, professor. And there you go. It's basically like you are a spy network as a person, and it's such an amazing class. I love this class. I love the teacher that teaches this class. All right. Oh, tell them about the pop quiz. Okay, this is really real. So one of my circle events was something that says like when there will be a pop quiz. So on one of my lecture days, the advisor said, "Hey, the alarm works, and there's a pop quiz." And I go, "Oh, okay." And then the teacher comes in and goes, "Students, we have a wonderful, wonderful session today. It's very special." And then my character, being the nerd that he is, goes like, "Sir, is it a pop quiz?" And then the teacher's like, "Excellent point, friend. Okay, raise of hands. Who knows there was a pop quiz today?" And 4 or 5 students raise their hands, including my character, of course. And then the teacher goes, "You have all passed the pop quiz. Everybody else fails. That's it." And then what? It's like, the pop quiz was knowing whether or not there was a pop quiz. And I'm like, what is this? So that's the kind of silly stuff that you can get into Argent. But speaking of tests, Josh, let's talk about finals and stuff and grading.
Sure.
How do we grade?
So finals at Argent, months in Indians are 60 days, and at the end of every month you will have a final for your semester for each class. And during the year, when you're taking classes, the professor might drop hints on what's on finals. You have to take notes and, veer your pages towards if you want to succeed the final. And a final is essentially a list of challenges and book checks based on what the professor might have told you or might not.
If your professor,
for example, in Incanting, Professor, he told us a couple things throughout the year. This is the final. You have to be able to do this. You have to make illusions into matter. But there are some things she didn't tell us, and we had to think on our feet.
Right.
And so usually each class is essentially a test based on a 10-point system, and that determines your final grade, A through F.
Right.
So, and it depends on the class, right? Incanting, is just a series of tasks, and each task is a point.
Right.
And those tasks relate to an 8 F scale. The grade you get locks your class and determines how good you are at that class in the future. So when I graduate or when I finish first semester, I get grades for all my classes, and that essentially determines the DC for each class from then on. So in future, in second semester, I can go back to my first semester classes and cast them, but if I didn't do so great, I might not be very good at casting those spells.
Right.
And I only have access to the spells I wrote down during the semester. I can't write new runes and incants, can't write new words and mysteries.
Right.
I just have what I made.
Yeah, because that's all that you studied, so to speak.
Right, because that's all that you studied. You could take an advanced mysticism class or something and take a sim type of class in the future potentially for another semester, but as far as the classes you took, that's all you have.
Right. And
if you fail a class,
ooh.
You cannot touch the class ever again. You can't look at, you can't cast anything from it. You are essentially banned from that class.
Right. So you're
as far as mechanical use.
Yeah. So in a way, the game itself incentivizes you to actually care about your schoolwork, because if you fail it, your character essentially loses access to magic, or makes it harder for them to cast that magic.
Right. But on the other hand, you'll be signed up for another semester, so of 3 or 4 new classes you take and cast spells from.
Right, exactly. Well, what else do we need to talk about? We talked about
the time system.
The time system.
Definitely.
Okay, so this is very simple. When we looked at the earlier classes, I think it's clearer on Josh's sheet. But when you look at the earlier classes, notice that there is a calendar here that says MA, and then there's a bunch of check marks, right? So throughout the first, second, third, and fourth days, classes will have time slots for, in the morning and in the afternoon. And much like a real college student, you have to plan your schedule around your classes. You have to take your classes at the designated times. But there are other things to do during your time slots, right? So what are those kinds of things, Josh?
Right. I mean, anything from adventuring to go on a date to doing a job for a professor to get money.
Right.
Anything, right? And you can go to a maximum of 2 time periods per class.
Right.
And a class is usually offered about 4 times a week. So you try to plan, Joel, and you can go to classes on different days, but the time system is kind of the big crux of the game, right? You have a morning slot and an afternoon slot. And during each slot, you can do one thing.
Right.
You can go to a class, you can go to the city and buy something, you could do a job, but that's all the time you have. And if you happen to forget, that, there was herbology today, you only have 3 other days you might hit it up on. You got to keep track of your schedule.
Right.
And make sure you get to classes. Or you could just, if you think you're ready for the final, you could just stop going to class and do other things, earn the adventure, who knows.
Right. I think the most important thing here to note is that the game itself kind of operates on a Persona-esque calendar, wherein
there's 5 days in a week, and each day has 2 time slots, right?
Right.
And there's 60 days in a month.
But more than that, right? Like, is that there are predetermined events that kind of, like, your advisor can say, like, on the 5th of this month, there's going to be, like, a big dance-off. Or on the 15th...
Yeah, there's a festival, or I want to see my office on this day to talk about something.
Right.
And those are coming up, and you can go to them, or you cannot.
Right. So, for example, my character really wants to get better at Wardens. I'll explain more of that later on. But my character wants to get better at Wardens, and there's, like, a Warden book signing for one of the best Wardens players ever. But then it, like, that is also on the same day that I need to take a final for one of my classes. So my character's like, do I go to the finals or do I go to this book signing, right? Like, so my character's like weighing in on one of these things. So it's like, it's the schedule really is the crux of, like, what makes you compete for your time and attention. And it really gives you that feel of, like, should I do X? Should I do Y? And it seems like you want to do so many things, but there's so little time and you have to prioritize. And that's really where the role-playing comes in, because my character is a nerd and wants to do well at school. So, like, why would he skip school for anything? He feels bad about it, but he'll probably just go to class anyway. You know what I mean? Despite the fact that the world might explode, he'll go to class. So that's really cool. Oh, what happens if you just spend every day partying, doing tasks, doing jobs, and going to school, Josh? What happens?
I mean, you'll fail all your classes, but you'll be to pay off your tuition, I guess.
Well, no. What if I go to... Every day I go to class, and whenever I have free time, I decide to party. I never rest. What happens, Josh?
Oh, there is a tentative stress system that we're considering.
Right.
If you don't take breaks.
Right. Because a healthy
it's
mindset...
not hard-coded yet. We're but there may not be a stress system where if you don't take time to, relax and chill out from school and the stresses of life, that you might become stressed from that. And
that might be bad for you. # bad for you.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing about time too is that day 5 of the week, school is closed. Like, you can't go to classes on day 5.
It's the weekend.
This is the time where most people go adventurers or hang out or whatnot. You essentially have 2 full-time slots to do. Or you could delve into the dungeons on Argent, or you could go to a concert and have fun with your friends. You could do all kinds of stuff.
So part of the setting is that it actually comes with a series of weekend activities that players can get into. Let's talk about 2 of them so that we're quick and easy.
Extracurriculars, yeah.
Right, the extracurriculars. So, for example, Wardens is the thing that my character is really into. And it's essentially magical wizard chess mixed with a MOBA. Like, that's what it essentially is. Like, there's a tower here and a tower there, and you put pieces on the board, and then you have to fight other pieces to destroy the other tower. And it's actually all really simple. What I really love about it is that it's also a gacha game. Because you can get pieces for the game, and then the advisor randomly gives you pieces and then assigns traits to them. So, some of my pieces include, let's see here, the unholy seeker with death perception, or the interfaced politician with rabble rousing, or the forgotten barbarian who is a beefy boy. And basically this game is like Calvin Ball, where I essentially have to narratively say, something like, oh, my forgotten barbarian is a beefy boy, so he throws the interfaced politician into the middle of the crowd, and he rabble-rouses them to rebel against their own master and destroy the tower themselves, It's like Calvin Ball. And then the opponent will basically do the same thing and go like, well, my biker druid summons a bunch of necrotic trees and then uses pop star magic to counteract that. And then some die rolls happen, and then whoever wins the die roll wins the match. And the point of the setting is that like this is a hook, right? So like you can enter like shadow tournament of wardens and for the fate of like whatever, or you just join it so that you become a warden's grandmaster and get a salary, right? So that you can get money. That's what my character's doing it for, because he wants to win tournaments and get some money so he can pay his debts. How about you, Josh? What weekend activity does your character usually partake in?
We mostly do club activities. So there are sports and clubs at Argent. Marco's game, they're doing more sports, Spellblitzer and Wardens and Mazecaster and whatnot. We, in our group, we have 2 groups running for playtesting, are part of the book club that we made up, and we delve beneath the library dungeons under Argent, the long forgotten, areas and sections of the library that nobody goes to anymore. So we do a traditional, dungeon delving type thing in our club.
What's the name of that?
We also have some in dueling club too.
Right.
And the dueling club has its own page, and you can like bet stuff and gain items if you win duels.
Right.
We met Calistar. That was pretty cool.
Oh, right, because she's in the dueling club. So.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a bunch of other stuff, like there's Spellblitzer.
All kinds of campus life.
Right. Yeah. So there's Spellblitzer. There's what's the other one?
Mazecaster, Wardens. Mazecaster's like a dungeon delving game where you and a group of friends are presented with a series of scenarios that you have to get past using all the spells that you've learned.
Right. For all
and you're competing against other teams trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, but note that all of these dungeons are like, faux dungeons, right? Like, so it's kind of like football.
Right.
It's like, college football, but instead of like football, it's dungeoneering. So it's like, I think the closest parallel to it is if you watched Monster University, the Scare Fest, right? Where they kind of like pretend to scare children in like a college football setting. It's kind of like that, but with dungeon delving instead. So
right.
I think that's a lot of stuff. We've already got into an hour and we haven't done Q&A.
Right.
So I think we should.
Can I talk about death real quick? Because I think that's important to note.
Death or debt?
Death with a TH.
Okay, sure. Go.
So death isn't really a thing in this game. You're at a magic university with a magical infirmary that you might be familiar with if you've played Argent the Consortium.
Right.
There is a fate worse than death in this game, and that is losing time. So if you're adventuring in a dungeon or you make the class jock a mat, whatnot, you might end up in the infirmary. And if you do, you have to spend actual time slots healing and getting better and whatnot. So, if you go into a dungeon and a golem wrecks you hard, you might be out of commission for all of Monday, which means you can't go to class on Monday and you can't do those plans you had on Monday, and hope that works out for you, kind of a thing. So, dying isn't a thing. Of course, the GM, your advisor, can say you die if they really want to, but that's not the intent of this game. If you get hurt, you just go to the infirmary and you lose time, and that's kind of how that works in the system.
Yes.
Yeah, Q&A. Let's get to the Q&A.
Q&A. Okay, now unleash your questions upon us, as we've probably talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we've got a good probably 15 minutes at least to answer questions.
A fate worse than I think the fate worse than death is debt. It's so hard to be out of student debt.
Yeah, because the infirmary will also come with a bill too, right?
Right.
So, it's not just time lost. You're also racking up your debt.
It's it's rough, man.
There.
Like how much debt is my character in? I am down.
Not as much as my character.
I'm down 2,055 Damari, which is the currency in the game. Do note that 5 Damari is 1 day's full wage for an unskilled worker, right? Like 5 Damari costs that much. 1 Damari is like 1 good meal. So like I'm 2,050 Damari deep in student debt, and I need to find a racket.
If you sign up for the dorms, that costs money. Every class you sign for not only has a tuition fee, but it has
materials,
books and whatnot that you have to buy to take that class.
Right. You have to buy your wands, your magic books, your scrying circles, and etc., etc., etc. It's the amount of money that I have to spend just for an education. My gosh. All right. How many books, PDFs do you anticipate will be needed to start playing? I think like 3, right? 3?
So there's a GM. There's what is essentially a GM guide with information on how the game works. There's a player guide which lists all the class. It's the curriculum prospectus.
Right.
And there is a campus magazine which has basically information on the hot spots on campus and what you do in Caroline, the city adjacent to Argent.
Right. So basically, it's like there's a player guide, DM guide, and a setting guide is essentially what we're stating here. So there that.
And it comes with a big map of the city, the campus as well.
All right.
And a book bag and whatnot.
In case you guys haven't been seeing the slideshow to our rights, we've been displaying some of the maps, we've been displaying some of the establishing shots, and we've been displaying some of the characters. I'd slide through this more, but you've probably already seen my character. Sadly, Josh's character's art isn't done yet, so she's not on here.
Yeah, but there's some professors in that mix and stuff.
Right,
too.
Currently on
screen
screen
is a lot of new art for this game.
Yeah, a lot of new Indines art, a lot of new Indines characters. What do you call this? The person on screen right now is Gulaveg Krom. She's the one who teaches me, or my character, lesser mysteries. All right, cool.
And of course, it's a GM game. The GM can make whatever they want. They don't have to use what's listed in the book.
Right.
But we have that in case you don't want to think of a professor for every class for all these students that you're advising. Right.
There are quote unquote prescribed professors, but they can just make up their own professors if they want.
Right.
Is it possible?
Zalazar can just teach every class if you wanted to.
So every class is taught by Welsi. Is it possible to mix class effects together, like throwing a rune on your gun to power it up? See, I like what you're thinking.
Absolutely.
Because that's the point. That's the point of this entire game. If any of you were thinking that, it's just cast this magic, the point is that you kind of Voltron together all of your spells to get them to do what you want to do, right?
Kind of, yeah. Some classes are more straightforward. But yeah, my camera that you saw has a bunch of magic circles on it that can make it float and move and take pictures for me so to do anything.
It's a drone? You made your camera into a drone?
Basically I made it a drone, yeah.
Hilarious. Will you have published adventures like other tabletop RPGs, or is the assumption that the milieu is enough of a framework? Yes and no.
No plans yet, but it's something that we're talking about. The initial release on Kickstarter probably will not have an adventure module, thing like that. It might a sample adventure that's a couple weeks of school,
right.
But no plans for a major here's a big adventure module book thing yet.
Right. And the note that modules in this game aren't invade Strahd's castle, whatever. Right? It's probably gonna be an actual calendar or something. It would make more sense for it to be a calendar.
Here's a big plot line that takes place over the course of this month. Here's a calendar telling you when things happen, right?
So it's kind of like a weird Majora's Mask thing, where the events of the thing happen around you, right? And you have to match your time slots with the plot. And if you basically just never attend to the plot, then it never the plot will happen while you're not there. So randomly near the end, if you just ignore the plot, the big bad evil guy can show up at the university and blow it up, and you're like, what the heck? You never knew this was the case, right? Because you just never cared.
I mean, it is a big campus, right? Other students can take it too. If you miss out on dealing with it, some other group might beat you to it.
Right.
And get the rewards, so.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions?
Let me check. Is it a project that's slated for Kickstarter?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Also, plans on offering specially made notebooks. Do we want to confirm or deny that?
There are plans to offer notebooks as part of Kickstarter. I don't know how special and customized and fancy they're going to be, but we are likely going to offer books as part of the project in some form.
All right.
Obviously, dice and pencil role games, you can pick up your own, or if you fill yours out, you can buy a new one for another semester if you run space or whatnot.
All right. Okay. Never expected Marco to be... Oh, this Cheska says, never expected Marco to be like his character. They say that all your characters are just weird morphs and manipulations of yourself in some way, so maybe. What's the maddest someone's made Dean Berman? I do not take any classes with Dean Berman, so I cannot say anything. Pretty sure...
Dean Berman took me out to dinner once because I was down on my luck. But I don't have a class with him either.
Oh, you right, because your character got into super debt because of some
Yeah,
blackmail.
I was
or
an artist
whatever.
character, and I decided to, instead of stay the dorms, buy a fancy house for myself that I could stay, because I wanted to experience like being a starving artist through the easiest means possible, which is crippling student debt. And that got me into a whole court case and stuff that I won't. You're right. Oh, that cost valuable class time talking to Phelana and stuff, and go to
Hey,
investigate
what
things.
you got
But
out of it was a BFF/GF for life, and
right, potentially, that I had to body swap with next semester to avoid my divine duties from the
oh,
classes they wanted me to take, because I play a Varian character.
right.
So it got kind of crazy
Okay.
so far.
Will Eric get the cane?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Real quick, as far as campaign time, so the suggested time for this game, you can usually cover a week's worth of classes in about 2 to 3 hours.
Right.
So if your group is going really far, you can do about 2 weeks in a setting in a session.
Right.
So, and graduating takes 4 semesters, so you can 60 5-day weeks, 60 days in a month. You can do the math
Right.
for how long you'll be playing this game if you do the full 4 semesters.
And it's really cool that when you graduate, your character essentially can do something in the setting, right? And then if you want to keep playing, you can keep playing as the character, I guess. But more
you
likely,
could be a professor, you could do graduate studies, yeah.
right? Or what's most likely is that your character turns into an NPC and you just play a different student, right? Like that's kind of what I want to do with my character. All right, cool. More questions. Will Eric get the cane tier stat block? I mean, Eric's a student. Like, he's a good sorcerer, but he's not that broken. Honestly,
I don't think we're going to have this game is abstract enough to where NPC stat blocks aren't really a thing.
Right.
Like, I guess we could have a stat block with the social and physical those traits, but I don't.
There's
know
no need. There's no need, right? Like, most of the time the DM just goes, "Oh, they cast the magic." You know what I mean?
Yeah, if Kala stars in your party and she makes a physical roll, you can headspace how many physical stats she has between 2 and 6 or whatever.
A lot of this game is not about trying to do mechanical stuff, right? Like,
it's a very social focused art, despite how mechanics heavy the classes are.
Right. Because the mechanics of the classes often yield social effects anyway, right? It's not
the mechanics are a vehicle for social results.
Right. Honestly, I've been sad that non-D&D games don't have as much cool swag, and this seems like a really cool bit of swag. Yeah. People killing dragons panic. Actually, let me just tell you, people killing dragons in this setting is not panic. People killing dragons in this setting is legal. So,
that gets into the Dragon Wars that you can, read Grand Chronicle about.
Right.
To find out more.
The system doesn't use miniatures, it seems. I mean, yes, because there's no combat in this game. Let me be very clear. Right?
There's no grid system. There's no board you put dudes. No, it's all headspace. It's all theater of the mind.
Right. It's all theater of the mind, but also it's like combat in this. Okay. Me trying to solve a puzzle, me going on a date with my girlfriend, and me killing a dragon, all basically are the same game, right?
Yeah, everything is essentially a puzzle and a challenge you are put against.
How do I solve all of these things? Well, I could try to use my stats and persuade people, or I cast a spell. How do I study more? I create a pocket dimension so I don't get disturbed. How do I woo my girlfriend? Well, I turn darkness into matter and create flowers from nothing. How do I kill the dragon? I use my ability to manipulate the laws of reality and summon a boat, right? Like, it's all the same thing. So there's no disconnect, which is which I love.
If you cast a light bolt, if I draw a magic circle, cast a light in that spot, it doesn't have range or distance or that. It just happens, there.
Yes. 48 sessions.
If I shoot a fireball, the advisor can, it's too far away, but the advisor should really go, okay, it hits them, and the scene progresses into X, Y, or Z things.
Yes. Do Batrov, Wargrave, or Rixia Van Sorel teach any classes? I mean, you're gonna have to get the book.
Wargrave does, yes. Rixia is still a student. At the time this game takes place in the setting, so she is not a professor yet, but you could make her one if you wanted to.
I think they say, don't get me wrong, I like that the physical conflict is its own separate mini game. It's just that I think miniatures are cool. I mean, I think miniatures are cool too, but I don't think this game needs them, and we don't need to bloat this game. Will this Argent RPG have any impact on Argent the consortium?
You mean, what do you mean?
With like
this game won't come like things for Argent the board game. It won't come with like.
Right, it's just set in the same place, right? Like that's just it.
Mm-hmm.
Digi in chat says, "Hey, it's me." So this is actually Digi's character, Nadia, who is a tumbleweed dryad. So that's cool. She's like I think she's a engineering student whose entire thing is that she has a mech suit that turns into a motorcycle, and then she participates in races. Right.
So she's Thalia.
She's Thalia. Okay, well, yeah, I guess she's Thalia from Soccer Arms. All right, any more questions, folks? Any more questions? Because if not, we're just gonna bounce. Because I guess we could talk about our characters. Hey, Josh, who do you play?
I play Francine. She's a Viridian who has learned that friendship is more important than doing her Viridian mission correctly.
Right.
And she's currently struggling with a mid-life existential crisis at age 18 of whether or not she needs to complete her mission or have friends and go to school.
Right.
She's double majoring in technomancy and planar science. Actually, let's talk about as a kind of closer. Let's talk about majoring. So,
sure.
Majoring is also a mechanic in this game. By the end of second semester, you have to declare a major. So, technomancy, divinity, sorcery, etc.
Mm-hmm.
To declare a major, you have to have taken 3 classes minimum
prereqs
in that school
right.
of magic. When you declare a major, you get access to a special class in third semester or second semester if you're a tryhard. And you get this really cool class that gives you a benefit that no player gets unless they're also majoring in that department.
Right.
So, like, for example, natural magic gives you access to the class Pack Rush, which essentially puts you in the Harry Potter House Cup, and you get your own group of friends that go around, and you can invite the scenes. And these work like normal classes too. In Pack Rush, when you go to a lecture, you define another student in your pack,
right.
and you give them traits, and you can sub into scenes as the cast,
right.
and have them help you out.
Our internal joke of this is always, Jimmy, I need you to throw the basketball, Jimmy. And then Jimmy...
Right, so Jimmy has a throws basketball trait, like, knocks the wand out of Voldemort's hand before he hits me with the
right.
bolt.
Yeah, so Pack Rush is essentially you have a frat, and you're all a bunch of dude bros, and you hang out, right?
In sorcery, you get to study under one of the sorcery professors, and you basically get a second advisor to, like, go to and ask for help.
Right.
And whatnot.
So you essentially get a super NPC friend. In mysticism,
right.
What do we get in mysticism? I forget. It's insanity. You get greater mysteries, right?
You gain access to the greater mysteries of the world.
Right.
And so you get to take the greater mysteries class, which is another ridiculous magic class to do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right. What else? In Divinity, you become a saint, so one of the gods appoints you a saint.
Yeah, and you get benefits from that. So you gain access to a lab where you can make your own crazy, weird inventions. What's left? There's one left.
Planar science. What does planar science get?
Planar science. And so you gain access to a pocket dimension.
Oh, right.
You take a class that lets you kit out your pocket dimension and learn how to use it safely without causing temporal and spatial anomalies.
Right. By the way, on screen is my character. Yay.
Nice.
Yeah, Nino Alcance. Okay, so there's more questions, I think. Since Marco likes Wilhelm Bartz, I guess you can use mysticism to know that you're in an RPG. Okay, should we mention classes that aren't approved yet?
So, obviously this game is still in development. We've developed about half of the classes that exist. One of the classes that we're pitching. Right now is the 300 level class for mysticism. So every department has 2 300 level classes, one really, really cool class, and a thesis class. The thesis class is essentially make your own class.
Right.
So when you graduate Argent, you'll get to make your own cool class that you can post board and stuff and share with the world, and other people can take it. Right. So it's essentially a rule set for, hey, here's how we made classes in this game, and here's how you can make them too.
Right.
The other class is a big cool class, like in sorcery, it's war magic. You can learn, how to blow up cities with Dean Berman. In mysticism, our pitch is
Dark
a
Revelation.
class that has no name and whose class description is "Let Their Eyes Be Opened." It's essentially a class that lets you talk to the Dark Masters, the weird mystic forces that underlie mysticism magic.
Right.
And these mystic forces are the players themselves.
Right. The Dark Masters are the other players. So it kind of breaks the fourth wall, wherein you suddenly realize that you're just a character in a board game, and that the Dark Masters are the players themselves. So usually, whichever pitch we end up going with, it involves you talking to another player at the table and going like, "Write in my book for me," because you reveal.
Let me cast magic, please, and they
Right.
will let you via writing in your book.
Yeah,
so they define the spells for you.
Yeah, my pitch is that it's Mad Libs. So you create sentences with blanks, and then the Dark Masters, aka other players, fill in the blanks for you without you telling them the context of the sentence. So you can go like, "I run adjectively," and then you're like, "I need an adjective," and then somebody goes like, "Beautiful." So you're like, "I run beautifully." So that's the kind of class where it's like just absolute insanity. The point being that the class in my proposal is trivial, so it just becomes true. So if somebody says you run swiftly, then I just run swiftly. Like that's just true now. It warps reality around that. So that's the kind of crazy stuff that you can do with some classes. Some of the classes that I've proposed are fun, and I really want them.
And as we mentioned, classes have 1, 200, and 300 levels. They have prerequisites and stuff.
Right.
The thing to note about that is that higher level classes aren't necessarily more powerful mechanically. They just let you do crazier stuff socially, right? Like a base level 100 level planar science class might let you manipulate physical traits of objects, but a 2 or 3 level planar science class might let you like open portals in space time and stuff.
Right.
And you could do that with a level class. Like with incanting, I could make a sequence of verbs to form a magic circle that rips a portal in space time, but that's going to take a lot more work and a lot more verbs than just the 2 level planar science class that just lets me open a portal.
Right. Yeah. Basically, the higher level classes just require you less narrative steps to just say I do the thing, right?
Right. Or give you access to like crazier things like weather control or like regulomancy or whatnot.
Right.
They let you do things you couldn't even conceptualize in lower level classes.
Right. Okay, so let's answer some more questions. Will Grand Chronicle be printed along with this game? No final words on that. Sorry. Can you be expelled? Is that like permadeath? It depends.
I don't think there's any hard mechanics for it, but an advisor is certainly able to expel a student, but then they would have to make a new character at that point, basically.
Right. It's basically permadeath. Do we have a time frame on when this will be available? As we said at the start of the stream, no definite dates. So sorry, no. Time crimes? Time crimes! Okay. So in other words, the player character is great. Okay. I love the idea of using phenomenal cosmic power to like cheat on a test or perform a prank on a rival. When you could be like helping save the world or making everybody's lives better. That's the thing, right? That's what this is. Like sometimes you have to end up saving the school from something, but like most of the time you're like, I manipulate reality to make Josh trip and eat dirt. Like that's really what it is.
And that's kind of the thing too, right? Is that like since professors are around watching you, some more than others cough Zalaz or cough every planar science professor.
Every planar science professor just seems like the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher in Harry Potter. They're all so sketchy. That's...
Right. I've had situations in the test RP that we're doing where like Zalaz is one of my professors and he's clearly up to good, but of course I can't prove it. And like everything I do he's aware of, and he'll like casually mention to me. There was one time in the game where he handed some weird planar science device and he's like, "Here, I want you to test this for me. Don't worry, you'll use it." And at a completely unrelated point in the future, apart from mechanics, I was put in a situation where I was kind of forced to use that item or, get wrecked and be in the infirmary for like 3 days.
Right.
And so, I went back to class the next day and he's just smirking across his desk at me. So, that's kind of thing, right? It's not just about how do I use God level magic to cheat on tests. It's how do I do that without my professors catching on?
Right. Because
how do I get my professors in on it so they don't rat out to like Monad and the Silver Shields or
Right.
whatnot.
See,
Right.
and that's the thing,
So-
right? Like, remember that your characters have phenomenal cosmic power, but you're all like college students, right? Your professors are infinitely more powerful than you. So when you go like, I
Yeah,
cast magic,
Argent has school rules that you have to abide by.
right?
And if you can get around them, great. But still, crime and punishment not to be had on
Right.
campus.
Yeah, you have to reckon with the consequences of your actions. There is literally a page dedicated to the laws of Argent.
Yeah, when you make a character, you have to sign a document that says you abide by the rules while you're at Argent.
Right. Okay, so let's answer some more questions. I guess the question can be saved for later. Is the week timeline strict one for a session, or can be more like lax and focus on it's up to your play group. Like the recommended thing is that 1 week per session. But we're not your mom. We're not
Argent kind of talks about the concept of micro scenes, where a time slot is intended to be a short little 2 to 3 minute thing because all one is going to a bunch of different classes and you got them long. But if you have a smaller player group, or if you just want to and the players are fine, that you can certainly literally role play an entire class in a professor voice about what they're teaching you and whatnot. So it's up to the group. Recommended is a week per session-ish.
Right. So debt, of course, is bad. But how does that affect you taking classes? Or how does it affect you when you graduate? So it doesn't... So the way it works is that Argent extends an infinite line of credit to all of its students. So even if you are in crippling debt, you have infinite spending power, right? It's just that
basically, yeah.
At the end of the semester, by the time that you should graduate, if you have not paid all of your debts to Argent, you basically become a wanted criminal and get arrested, and a bunch of bad things happen to you.
Yeah, and you can't graduate and use your 300 level classes.
Right. So it's
that's kind of the end goal. All right,
Right.
you gotta have this debt paid off.
You gotta
and of course, if you racked up a bunch of debt fourth semester, hopefully the should be accommodating and give you some ridiculous plot that will magically allow you to pay off your 3 million denarii debt by the end of the semester, because of course you're going to pay your debt off by the end of the semester.
I mean,
hopefully.
Also, you could just dedicate every single living time slot you have to doing odd jobs, which could yield the same result.
Yeah, you could just take a class that gets rid of your debt if you play the class correctly.
Right. There is a class called Necroeconomics where you can essentially summon dead zombies to do odd jobs for you, and they earn you money at the end of every week.
Yeah, there are some classes that gain you money. They're basically doing jobs for the campus.
Right.
And you can earn money from some classes.
Yes. Okay. How many game sessions does a semester take roughly? It depends on your group. If you take 1 week to do a session, which around a session that's 2 to 3 hours long for a week, right? Then every semester at Argent is 60 divided by 5 is 12 weeks long. So there, depending on how your group does it.
Yeah, we have just finished 1 semester in Brad's test group, and we're starting second semester now. So we've been playing for about 3 months now.
Right. I mean, you guys meet once a week, right? So
yeah, usually, yeah.
Right.
But again, it's if you play micro scenes quickly enough, you could probably get through 2 weeks in a sitting.
Oh man,
easily.
Necroeconomics is my favorite part about Necroeconomics is that I think your final grade is based on how much profit you make, so or something along those lines. It's hilarious. Okay, any estimate on pricing? No, sorry.
Nope.
Wizards, no sense of right or wrong. That's funny, because a lot of wizards do have a sense of right or wrong. My character absolutely does not. My character is a rasp who has no moral compass except the letter of the law. So, he could see somebody mug somebody else, but if the law says that mugging is okay, he'll be like, cool. He might mug somebody as a result of doing that,
We probably have time for one more question.
Yeah, one more question. So get your last question in, and then we're gonna go bounce and do other things with our lives.
We might talk about this on another stream later,
right.
But
no,
we might have a page going up for this.
Next week's stream is definitely gonna be the bullet one, right?
So next week, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be talking about Bullet Star, and maybe that other bullet thing. Probably not, but hopefully.
Maybe cough bullet cough.
Maybe I'll ask Brad if I can talk about it.
Right, but Bullet Star definitely new heroines to be seen. I'm really excited for it for for a special reason, for one
Hopefully
specific
we'll have a
era.
couple of them finished and in line before that time. So we're
Right.
still testing a few of them.
Oh man.
So yeah, Les, any last questions about Argent?
Oh, yeah. Any last questions about
we go.
Argent? Anyone? I will give them 5 minutes, man. I'm really
Sure.
shocked. I realized this last night that both of us had the same idea when making characters. When we were like, let's take a typical Indines race that's known for X and then just flip it on its head.
Right.
Right? Because Virians are angels, essentially, and your Virian is like, well, my angel doesn't really care about the holy mission that's been assigned to her, and she just wants to take pics for Instagram or something. Like, I don't know.
Something, yeah.
Right. Because as far as I know, Francine is dressed like a goth, right? Like, she wears all black.
Yeah,
and-
she has black hair and wears like a black dress, and yeah.
Right. So she's like a goth angel, which is like the most goth
Kind of.
thing I've ever heard. And Nino is a rasp, and a popular rasp on Indians would be Regicide Hikech, known popular assassin who kills royalty for a living. And rasps are supposedly feed off the negative emotions of others, and blah 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 blah. And then my character is essentially like the student council president type character. Comes to class 30 minutes early, is friends with all the teachers pet like the guy, and you might be asking.
It's interesting exploring like what is a normal like what is a normal rasp like, what are these
Right.
low tier characters.
By the way,
like,
lore-wise, if people are wondering what negative emotion does Nino feed on, that's the name of my character, Nino. He feeds on the annoyance people feel when he acts like a stickler or when he tells them to follow school rules. That's it. This is Ekin. This is Kier's character. He's a ghost and a silver shield. A ghost silver shield.
So you might have noticed, all the races are kind of available, right? As we mentioned, they don't, they have as much mechanical bear game as you want them to,
Right.
but we do talk about all of these races: dragons, ghosts, rasps, elvons,
Mimics,
all of them in the game.
beastkin, humans. You can just be anything you want. You can be a dryad too, like Digi.
Right,
plays
yeah, you can be a dryad.
Brad also plays a dryad named Murby. We don't have art for Murby yet, but yeah, it's man, I'm excited. Okay, so is there any more questions left in the chat? Will there be splat books? What's a splat book? Josh, do you know what a splat book is?
I think they're talking about like little, like essentially modules, right? Like a book of like magic items or a book for like, another part of it. It's like a setting book. Here's the Frozen North, or here's Amalau.
I see.
Or whatnot.
No plans for that.
No
right
plans
now.
for any extraneous materials outside the core game right now.
Right. The core game is pretty meaty. It has like as we mentioned, like currently we have 30 something classes, and we need to make more. So it's gonna be crazy. All right. I think there's okay. Okay. I don't think there's. Yeah. No. Not. Yeah. Right. I don't think this is the kind of game that does that, right? Like, because we already provide so many classes, right? I guess the splat book would be more classes, but like, why? Just include.
Yeah, there might be some expansion material in the future, but for right now, for the Kickstarter at least, it's just going to be the base game.
Right.
But as with all Kickstarters, there's no plans for stretch goals or anything like that.
Right.
So
yeah, do note that like, because of the kind of game this is, a splat book doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of things, right? Like, why would we make a splat book for, like, Beastkin or whatever when, like, it doesn't matter. Just narratively do what Beastkin do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to go like, yes, there's, like, 17 kinds of Beastkin, and, like, a winged Beastkin can fly as an action every 3 long rests. You know what I mean? Like, no. Hey, you can be a Kaon! You can be a Kaon.
yeah, you can be a Kaon. Yep.
Dude, one of the teachers is also a Kaon. I forget his name. Can you pronounce the teacher's name? You made him, so.
What, Amaranthelos?
There you go.
Yeah, he's got a really short, so he's not a great powerful Kaon like Oriana
Yeah.
or anything. He's just kind of a dude.
Yeah, he's
Kind of like Welsi.
right. Yeah, like Welsi. I mean, what is his power? I don't know.
Oh, I haven't thought about that yet. I think his power is
Friendship.
friendship. Yeah.
I hate you so much. But he's also the first canon male Kaon, right? Because most Kaons that we've had are all female.
Yeah, I wanted to. I got to, and some other professors for art. I absolutely wanted to make a male Kaon because we haven't seen one yet.
Right. So you have a male Kaon.
That's nice.
Man, you can be a mimic too. I forgot. Matlock plays a mimic, so that's cool too.
Oh, doppelganger? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool things you can do in this game, and finally I have a canon Indines character that isn't a self-insert. So thank God. There you go.
Speaking of canon in characters, if you when the Kickstarter is live, you might be able to do that as well if you back at certain tier levels.
Yes, if you back at certain tier levels.
But the nature of those tier levels will leave for the Kickstarter. So it's probably time to sign up. As far as our Adventures at Argent is concerned, we're going to kind of be going dark on it for a while. We might put up a website page for it in the coming weeks, but we're not sure yet.
Yeah, what you're going to see on that page is basically a lot of the stuff we already
what
talked
we said
about.
Today.
Yeah. There's the one last question, which I think is very important. Are there pre-made, pre-gen characters? My question is this. Why? Why do you need pre-made, pre-gen characters?
Yeah, a character, character creation is really straightforward, right? You make some traits and you put them into one of 4 categories, and that's kind of it.
That's it.
The classes you take are up to you. Maybe we'll make a list of suggested classes, I guess, if you don't know what to take.
I mean, Josh, the answer is take all the 101 classes. They're literally built like a college, so just take the 100 level classes. They're all meant for beginners. I think the point here is that, I think, pre-generated characters only
this isn't a game that, needs them or, works.
Right. And I think it ruins a lot of the point of the game, right? Pre-generated characters are there because you want to get into the systems of the game and feel the mechanics, right? Without having to worry about character creation, what skill builds you make.
Right.
But the point is that this game is entirely about the narrative justification for your character to do things.
Yeah, literally every class you take and every lecture action you take, you make a decision that defines your class page. My engineering page might be completely different than marketing page. So,
right.
If we gave you a filled out engine page and said, here, do this, there would be no game.
Yeah, because the game is the building of your character, skill
Yeah,
tree.
your book is essentially your character. It's not just your traits, it's your class, it's the contacts you've made, it's your item, it's all kinds of stuff.
The people, my inventory, the people that I've met, who they are, what are their roles in my lives. I will never forget my warden's mentor, Bovus Bus, who tried to scam me out of my stuff, here's my schedule for the week and all the classes that I need to take, right? Character creation is the game. So giving you a pre-gen character ruins the point of it, right? I don't feel the need to explain it further.
Yeah, I don't think that's probably see in the final product.
Oh, to use as NPCs on the fly. Then that's just characters in the setting. Right, there are characters in the setting. You don't need stat blocks for them or whatever. The book will probably come. Hey, look, this is Macro. He's a sorcery guy and he uses magic and stuff. Or
Yeah, every class will list a professor with an art and a little bit of it about them, and there were also pictures of different students and stuff. The book, so there'll be plenty of art and whatnot to take ideas from.
Right.
That kind of a thing.
And so the pre-gen characters, I guess, are NPCs. Are in the game. They're just students and teachers that already exist in the setting. My character, Josh's character, Brad's character, all of them will be in the game, right? You'll see them, you'll see a little bit about who they are and what they do. Maybe not as in-depth as we know the characters, but you see this elf guy with the book and he looks like a total nerd, and you'd probably beat him up and stuff him in a locker, and that's probably all you need, right? No offense to Davey who plays Macro.
All right.
All right.
If you're listening.
Yeah, if you're listening. All right, cool. I think that's it. I don't want to belabor the point anymore. We've gone overtime, which I expected entirely. I told Josh that we would go overtime for sure. So, without much else to say, it has been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as Nino Alcance, student of mysticism. And with me has been the ever-amazing, ever-wonderful project manager, Level 99 Games himself.
Josh, also known as Francine, last name redacted.
I guess that's fair. Last name
because I haven't thought of it yet.
I see. Student of what?
Yeah.
Student of what? What are you majoring in?
Technomancy and planar science.
All right. So thank you all, students at Argent. Thank you all, incoming freshmen. And hopefully we see you on campus whenever it happens. Don't forget to pay your student debts. And we'll see you 2 weeks from now when we talk about Bullet Star. Thank you so much, and good night.